Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coffee and Conversation right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I am joined today by Sheila Ruffin from Soca Yacht Club. And I've been seeing some stories about you, Sheila, so welcome aboard here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You've been talked about quite a bit. There's news stories popping up here, there, and everywhere. The fact that you are literally the only African American owned yacht charter company.
Yeah. Amazing. Sometimes I have to pitch myself, pinch myself.
Well, tell me about your journey. I mean, you are originally from a small town in the United States on the Atlantic coast, and you became a lawyer. Tell me how you went from this small town on the Atlantic coast to becoming a lawyer in Washington, D.C., and then ending up in the Caribbean with your own
Yeah,
charter company.
yeah, yeah. What an amazing journey, right? So I am from a small town, like you mentioned, on Virginia's eastern shore. We are a peninsula that sits directly in the Atlantic Ocean. So I grew up around water all of my life. Uh, Everyone back home had a boat growing up. My grandfather, whose nickname was Big Rich, he made his own boat. He could not afford one, but he made a homemade boat. And he and his best friend would go boating on the Chesapeake Bay. And so, having that story and having that background of my grandfather, I was a water girl. I just really loved the water. And so, when I graduated from college, I wanted to matriculate to law school, and that's exactly what I did. But having that background of being a water girl, I decided to kind of specialize in environmental law and coastal zone issues and making sure that the environment from a water perspective was clean and not deteriorated. And so after law school, I moved to St. Thomas in the US Virgin Islands to work on maritime tourism issues. So if someone wanted to build a yacht marina, they would have to come to that place where I worked and get an application. And we would talk to them about the environmental problems. And that's when I became familiar with yachting. I had no idea about it. I knew about boating, but once I was in St. Thomas, I figured out everything I needed to know about yachting. And in looking to have a yacht vacation myself, I could not find a one-stop shop, a company that gave me everything from ground transportation to gratuity included to having a luxury car service. I couldn't find that. And in addition to that, I could not find a company that marketed or advertised a person of color. And so instead of complaining and getting angry, I knew that that was a chance for me to start my own company called Soca Caribbean Yacht Charters.
Well, let's go there because I'm
Mhm.
interested.
Yeah.
One of the things that you just hit on that I notice as well, it doesn't matter what yachting magazine you pick up. It does not matter what sign you see with a beautiful yacht up, unless, of course, it's Rihanna, for example, on her yacht charter week. There is nothing designed for not only African American, whether you be black, brown, whatever color you may be, it is pure white as the driven snow.
Yeah.
Now, is that something that you notice straight across the board, and is it something that you're trying to address?
I definitely noticed it straight across the board, with the exception of, like you mentioned, with celebrities, right? You have your NFL football players and your NBA players and your singers and actresses. Besides those persons of color, you're right. You're not going to see a person of color reflected in the magazines, um, on the social media outlets, in newspaper articles, or even radio, or even yacht crew agencies. You're not going to find persons of color, and so it's very important for me to ensure that I educate the yachting industry that if you do not grab persons of color now, to be straight and honest, especially in the United States, Caucasians are not the number one wealthiest demographic in the United States. Asian Americans are. And so as you are phasing out, if you want to talk money, let's talk money. And so I'm hoping that by bringing in the facts and figures that the yacht industry will understand this is not a color thing. And if it is a color thing, the only thing we should be worried about is the color green, which is the color of money.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And they've lost an entire segment of not just one segment of the population. We were speaking off screen and you were giving me some stats on African Americans and their stats and Hispanic Americans as well. I mean, what were those stats we were talking about?
Yeah, so and even in myself in learning and researching about people of color, I was actually shocked myself. But African American, we spent close to $64 billion in revenue in 2018 towards the U.S. travel market. Asian Americans spent about $56 billion towards the United States travel market. Asian Americans are the wealthiest demographic in the United States, and 41% of U.S. immigrants matriculated to the U.S. between 2010 and 2017. Hispanic Americans spend $4,000 annually on travel in the United States, and then $6,000 for international travel. Um, and Hispanic Americans take an average of two or more trips beyond non-Hispanic. And so having this knowledge, and I started to think, okay, these demographics have the money, but why isn't the yachting industry, why aren't we as a whole focusing on these persons of color? And we have to get these persons of color now because we don't want other industries to get them. So why not go after them right now before it's too little too late?
Do you think that the yachting industry is a bit stuck in the 70s to a certain degree?
Oh gosh, not to a certain degree. I absolutely think 100% that the yachting industry is stuck in decades ago. Definitely.
Because, even with their hiring practices, I mean, you don't see a lot of crew agencies that are dedicated to people of color and women. I mean, there's a lot of discrimination within the yachting industry as a whole. It's sexism, the LGBTQ community, color. There are so many discriminatory practices within the yachting industry. And I think we all know about it, but everyone's afraid to talk about it. And unfortunately, we are now in 2020. And those people that have set those rules back in 1970, they're almost ready to die off and retire. Now, if the yachting industry doesn't wake up and change that concept and change their tune, they're going to find that they're going to be kicked out by somebody else coming along who is willing
Yeah.
to come into the year 2020. You, not just that long ago, experienced a bit of racism, as it were, or attitude when you were in Europe doing some yacht shows.
Yeah, yeah. So in May of last year, now I have to say last year, right? May of 2019, I had the opportunity to go to the Barcelona Super Yacht Show, and I had an amazing time in Barcelona. But on the first day, I went to tour some of the super yachts, and I'm not sure if people are knowledgeable, but with this particular show, you have, I guess, the yacht crew on like the bridge area. And so you have to kind of check in with them and speak with them and take off your shoes and then walk across this bridge to get to the super yacht. And so there was one super yacht I was very much interested in viewing. It was a beauty. I mean, it was absolutely gorgeous. And the person, it was a woman, um, she gave me some attitude and would not allow me to tour the super yacht. She uh, indicated that, oh, this super yacht is for individuals with money. And I just decided to leave it alone. I said, let me go to another company, let me go to another super yacht. And I was very disappointed. And it did hurt me, in all honesty. I even had to call my sorority sister, and I had to get her to calm me down, because I was very irritated. I had traveled way from Washington, D.C., in the United States, to go to Barcelona to get my name out there and to make some contact. And, to that young woman, hello, girl.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, realistically, we need to start changing these concepts. And it's such a shame that you experienced this from another woman.
Yeah.
I mean, just another woman, full stop. You would assume that we would support one another, and that's unfortunate. But the hiring practices as well. Are you aware of any crew agencies out there that are looking to place African American individuals in any form or fashion?
I'm not. I've reached out to some in Fort Lauderdale in the Miami region, asking them if they have any persons of color. Specifically, at this point, I asked for African Americans, and they said they had none. They knew of none. Um, in I think 2000 and maybe 10 or 2009, there was an instance where a Fort Lauderdale yacht charter company discriminated against an African American woman based upon her race and her weight. And what happened with that particular instance is the individual that she interviewed with mistakenly sent her an email, as opposed to, I think, their supervisor or their higher up, stating, we cannot hire her because of her color and her weight. And she sued them and was given monetary, I think, damages because of that. I think last year, the year before, another individual who was a deckhand for a boating company, he was discriminated against because his supervisor used uh, racial wording and allowed, I think, his coworker to do the same thing. And so, it's really sad that in 2020, we're still at this level where we feel like, in some instances, we're back in the 1960s.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, these yachts, if they are if they're owner used, they're not for charter. These are people's floating homes. So if they want to have Barbie, who is 19 years old and blonde, scrubbing their toilets with a toothbrush, or the head with a toothbrush, they're entitled to that. But I
Sure.
think we get to a certain degree when we're talking about brokering and chartering, because then it becomes an industry, it becomes regulated. It's not your home any longer, it is an actual business.
Right.
And at that stage, you're correct. I mean, people, there are issues. It's like anything. Yes, okay, a certain amount of weight, you won't be able to do the things that are needed if the boat is in the middle of the ocean and capsizes, and certain things have to be done.
Yeah.
I get seasick, so it's not going to be me. But there's definitely certain laws that have to be followed and have to be looked at. And if you've got a charter, and sometimes it even comes down to the brokers. It's not necessarily the charters, the owners of the yacht themselves, because they just have this yacht that they charter. It's the people that are running them that make those decisions. And I think it's an absolute shame. And I mean, do you think maybe that this starts? Because I don't see, even in, we were talking about the charter marketing in magazines and newspapers and televisions. We also have marketing that goes into the C schools, but you don't
Hmm.
see any people of color represented in C schools either. You don't see people targeting, people of color to come to our C school and learn how to become a yachty.
Yeah, I mean, what I do like about, in the Washington D.C. area, the first African American yacht club in the United States was founded in Washington D.C., called the Seafarers Yacht Club. And the great thing about those captains in that club and other club in the Washington D.C. area, there's another one called, I believe, the Universal Yacht Club. These are Black captains that are going into inner cities to teach Black and Brown youth about being a sailor, about being a deckhand, about being a stew. And so I love that. and I've been in contact with some of them. One recently contacted me this morning who is in the Miami Fort Lauderdale region, because it really starts with that local base. You're not going to find that on the international level, but I think it
Yeah.
really starts on the ground level of getting some yacht clubs who are maybe 30 miles from an inner city to use yachting and using sailing and boating to help some of these inner city Black and brown youth that feel like they don't have an opportunity. Well, let's get them on the water and teach them about being some watermen and water women. And yeah, I think it starts there.
Well, and I think, I mean, it's a way out of poverty as well. You know, if they come from the inner city and they are surrounded and live that type of lifestyle, there is something very wholesome about being on the water. There is something that teaches you about teamwork. There is something that makes you stronger, healthier. I mean, the air is better, guaranteed.
Right.
Um, and it also gives you hope. And I think sometimes that's really what's missing in a lot of these kids' lives, is because if you're in the same 4 block radius, you know, your whole life, and all you see is despair and drugs and everything else that goes on in the inner city,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're on the ocean and you see the endless sky and you see the, you know, the water that just goes on forever and the beautiful boats and you smell the air. You know, it does give you hope, and it does give you that thought that possibly there's a whole world out there that you never knew existed.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Well, and I mean, there's also a financial aspect to that too, because yachting is notorious for being very well paid.
Yeah, very much. And not only that, I mean, you can travel the world by being a yachty. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Had I knew about this, have known about this after college, who knows where I would have been? I may would have come, been a stew and been on like a below deck or something.
Yeah, the below deck isn't that popular, I think, in most yachting circles because it's not really reality television, is it? It's like all the other reality TV series. They're fairly well scripted by this point. They don't really show you what's up. But so where is the next step for you then? What do you see yourself doing, say, in the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah, gosh, I would say in the next 5 years, I really want to become involved again in the inner city, because for me, it's not only about money. I did not go into this being this money hungry individual. I mean, let's be honest, I am an attorney. I'm not thirsty for money, but it was very important for me to educate. And
Mhm.
so in the next 5 years, I want persons of color to know that yachting is a viable vacation option. We just don't have to go cruising. And if you love cruising, that's fine. But I want to educate persons of color to say, hey, you know, we can go yachting in St. Thomas or in St. Vincent or in the Bahamas. We just don't have to do cruising. And so, whatever that looks like, if that's me going to travel expos, if that's me continuing to do yacht shows and things of that nature, or maybe even going to a natural hair expo, or going into sororities and fraternities to teach them about yachting. And so, if I can educate Black and Brown people about yachting, I don't think it would be a pulling teeth situation like I have now.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. It's really difficult. Another thing that I would love to do is to make sure that my website is in different languages. I would love to translate into Spanish. I would love to translate into Chinese. And so I need to do that as well. Um, and then the third thing would just be getting to a level where we can do some cross marketing with other companies.
Mhm.
For the past month, since I've become this popular phenomenon, I'm very thankful. I've gotten a lot of people that want to do cross marketing with my company. If they're a wedding company or do honeymoons, some of them have their own restaurant business and want to become a chef. I've gotten people that want to do bookkeeping and all of this good stuff, art collection agencies, high end luxury cars and things of that nature. So in the next 5 years as well, I would love to do some cross marketing with these different companies because we do service those upscale clientele.
Well, and what's the difference between wealthy and upscale?
Yeah, what a great question. So I get people, not everyone, but I do get individuals that say, "Oh, you can't do that because it's only for the wealthy. It's only for the celebrities. It's only for the actors and actresses." And what I tell people is, no, yachting is not for the wealthy, it's for the upscale. And the difference is, to me, an upscale individual, he or she chooses to do something better. He or she chooses to go against the norm and what's placed in front of them to try something different. And so, instead of just doing the cruises, why don't you spend an extra $2,000 or $3,000 to have a true personalized, stress-free experience where you do have your own personal chef or your stewardess or your own captain. You have someone to say, "Hello, Miss Ria. Today we have a peach Bellini just like you wanted, 7 a.m. in the morning. This is what we have for you." Or, "Miss Ria, we know that you like jerk chicken, from straight from Jamaica. So we wanted to make sure we got that for you, and so I just want people to choose something high end and choose something different. The other thing that's different is that upscale clientele choose to invest in themselves and experiences. Wealthy people, which eventually I will be that wealthy person, but wealthy people can pay for it and sometimes not value it because you just have the money, because you can drop $60,000 on one of my yacht vacations. But if you're upscale, you say, "Today, I'm not going to pay $2,000 or $3,000 for something else. I'm going to actually invest in myself, invest in my happiness and my joy to ensure that I have a week of fun and have a week's worth of relaxation and being stress free with my girlfriends or my guy friends or my family members or my sorority sisters."
That's brilliant. Well, I mean, realistically, what you're saying then is there are tens of billions of dollars out there that the yachting industry is missing out on as we speak.
Literally times that, because with that 56 billion and that 64 billion from African Americans and Hispanic Americans, the yachting industry is missing out on $100+ billion in revenue because they have overlooked these demographics. And I am the connection. I am the anchor between the yachting industry and those persons of color, so that we can both work together, so that the yachting industry can continue to be a top market in nautical tourism, but at the same time, persons of color can get a different experience.
Well, and I think really that now is the time for that change.
I totally agree. Right now, we got to get them right now.
Yeah, because I mean, as the time goes on and as situations change, if we're not grabbing them now, that money's gone out the door and it's gone somewhere else because somebody else is going to be smart enough to grab it.
My lights would go out. But no, you're right. And so I'm 33 years old. I am a millennial. And I know sometimes people use that word millennial and say, "Oh, you millennials." But no, we are, let's be honest, baby boomers are phasing out. Baby boomers are dying. And so millennials, we are becoming that wealthy demographic. It has been stated that between 2026 and 2029, that millennials will be that number one wealthy demographic. And so, yachting industry, my colleagues in the yachting industry, we have to get these millennials, people like me, now, because if we do not, like you mentioned, we're going to fall behind, and that's not what I want for my industry. As a yacht company owner, I want to make sure that we are in the forefront. I want to make sure that we are at the top of a millennial's mind when they want to go on a vacation. And so we have to start now, otherwise we're gonna get behind.
Well, thank you very much, Sheila. I know that you are busy, and it is very inspiring to chat with you, to broach some of these subjects. I would really love to stay in touch with you over the next bit and have you check in with us occasionally and let us know how things are going on your side of the pond.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. We'll definitely stay in contact. And I think we're one and the same person. And if anyone wants to get in contact with me, they can visit my website at www.soca, SOCA yachtcharter.com. You can also follow us on social media because I'm a millennial at Soca Yacht Charter. And then our email is info at socayachtcharter.com.
Well, I'm going to definitely provide all that information when this interview airs, so not to worry about it. If people want to get in touch with you, they can. And I do. I wish you the best of luck. I think the points that you made are very valid, and it's really important that the yachting industry takes a quick look at itself, if not for bias that has been there for years and years and years, but just for the simple fact that there's so much money sitting on the table that they haven't touched yet. And if there's anything the yachting industry is after, it's green.
There we go. That's the color we should be focused on.
Exactly. Thanks again. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Stick around for another edition of Coffee and Conversation right here on Yachting International Radio.